Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
It is Q&A 71, which it's interesting coming back to a regular length Q&A after the mega Q&A.
That's fair.
We
recorded.
recorded.
Have you gone through and done all the renumbering? Did you do that, you crazy woman? Okay.
I'm not going to do that. As a sneak peek behind the scenes, we have a Google Doc of just running Q&A numbers that I think we've probably broken 100 now. That tells you all how behind we are. But yes, incorporating mega Q&As when we might record episodes like that is going to mess with the numbers of the regular Q&As like you're listening to now, but I think I can keep track.
Oh, bless your heart.
I know this one is Q&A 71. Excellent. That is what I know. All right. And you're going to kick us off today, Kate.
That's fair.
And maybe starting with some disclaimers
you
shared with me.
Definitely with some disclaimers. It's hot as balls over here, guys.
Like 90 degrees.
Yeah, which I know to some of you in some parts of the country or world, that may not sound like much, but AC is not normal here. Right? Everything is hot. We're not prepared. We are pansies and our houses are ill-prepared. Which is all to say the windows are open and I'm not closing them, so the traffic noises are going to be louder. And at the moment I have a fan that's out in the hallway, so I don't think you guys can hear it, but if I'm too hot I might have to turn on the fan in the room and then you might hear that one. And perennially until indoor, unless he calms down more, there's the ever-present threat of Goose being loud.
Yes.
At a time that is difficult or impossible to edit out. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I was going to say right in the middle of when you're talking, potentially.
So there you go. Those are my disclaimers. Some of them more than normal. Goose. I don't know when that one's going to go away. We'll see. All right. So this first one, very short, but I think it's kind of hard hitting. It's punchy. So this one reads, I'm really, really struggling with invalidation and abandonment issues. I feel empty and hollow. No amount of self-soothe is helping. I just don't think I can tolerate anymore. Yeah.
You know, there's so many things about listeners that we don't know when they write things down, either in the Facebook group or in emails to us. The thing that I wish I could ask this listener is when you say no amount of self-soothe is helping.
What do they mean?
What do they mean? Or what are they looking for? Because the thing that I wanted to start off with in my response, just in case, is this reminder that emotion regulation, or distress tolerance, the self-soothe is a distress tolerance skill. It's not about making your emotions go away. And I think that's what people think, right? If I'm feeling, say, sad, which we could say empty and hollow, if we root those words back to a core emotion, they probably root back to sadness. So I'm feeling sad. I'm going to use my DBT skills, and then I'm not going to feel sad anymore. Nope, not how it works. What it's meant to be is that you can have your emotions at a level that feels tolerable. My sense, also reading this, though I don't know from the listener, is that, when they say I'm really, really struggling, that makes me potentially think that on a 1 through 10 scale of emotional intensity, they might be at an 8 or above. Like they were likely really struggling and feeling their emotion really strongly when they wrote this to us. And I hate to break it to you, listener, if that was the case for you, self-soothe isn't going to be the effective skill, right? We have this question with check. Yeah, you like to self-soothe for tons of things, right?
I make this mistake on the regular.
Yeah, it's like it's a skills mismatch. It's like, yeah, that skill is great, but not for either. I'm thinking of what it says in Check the Facts, right? Does my emotion and or its intensity fit the facts? Self-soothe fits the emotion, right? Self-soothe is great for sadness, but that intensity, no. And I also wouldn't be surprised too if there's like some fear or some hurt going on here as well. And self-soothe also probably isn't the best skill to like address fear. So what could be helpful, right? I want to give this listener something. My brain went to thinking about please a little bit here. Interestingly enough, I think that when we are in a place of like pretty deep emotional struggle, especially when it's around things like invalidation and abandonment, like they said, which leads me to believe that they're hurting in their relationships with other people. Well, there's a lot that we cannot do to control what other people say or do towards us, but like start with please. Really check in with yourself with how you're taking care of yourself. If you're like, I've been feeling so empty and hollow, I haven't eaten all day today. Go ahead and try to eat something, right? Or I've been sleeping too much, or I've been sleeping not enough. Okay, let's see if you can start to regulate that a little bit. Like that's just going to set you up, even addressing just one area of please, to be taking better care of yourself while you're struggling with invalidation and abandonment. I wouldn't move on to other more complicated skills like check the facts, even though I referenced a question from it. I would not move on to a skill like that until you're more physically regulated. Mindfulness can also be helpful, but like, again, in like a very small dose. And Kate, you're good at talking about this, right? Mindfulness, like for a moment, 5 seconds, where you might pause and just be aware of something in a different way and go, oh, I see that, or that feels pleasant, or whatever it is. And then, yep, the emptiness and hollow feelings might just wrap you right back up. Okay. For a couple of seconds, you were mindful. And that can be something to feel proud of for yourself, because that's also within your control. Your play skills are within your control. Mindfulness is within your control. Like I said, invalidation and abandonment are often not. But hopefully those things may help a little bit.
I love it. Talking about building resilience feels like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. It's funny. My notes to start with. I echo everything Michelle said. So for the record, I like pretty much all of that. And yeah, I also struggle with an impulse to reach for self-soothing in most times. So I sometimes have to check myself there. I will get to some DBT skills, but one thing that stood out to me, I guess technically the person didn't say I can't tolerate something, but my brain latched on to the I don't think I can tolerate this anymore. And I was just thinking about the importance of word choices. The words that we use matter. And, if we say things like I can't, or I think I can't do this thing, or I don't think I can do this thing. Well, if something's a literal can't, there's no reason to try, right? I can't fly. Trying, bad idea, right? Like, if you, I can't fit in that hole in the ground. I can't. Don't try, right? Like it's a sort of can't is a effort stopping, right? Kind of word, and it can become sort of self-fulfilling, right? Also, to an extent, I would say most of the time we say can't when we are, right? Which is an interesting juxtaposition. Like, I can't do this. Like, well, you are doing this. So what does that really mean? Right. And sometimes being more accurate, a little bit more specific with what that really means. Like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I think I'm going to collapse if I keep this up, whatever the can't actually means or looks like, can be helpful in, helping guide how you approach whatever's going on, I guess is what I was thinking about. Don't know how to, not sure I can, haven't figured out, there's other word choices that can be used in place of can't, and was just wanting to gently suggest that there might be some space to lean in that direction. DBT skill wise, I wanted to add that I thought accepts or improve might be helpful for this person. Maybe after they bring themselves down, like you were saying, Michelle, there's a lot of skills that aren't meant to be used if you're at an 8, 9, or 10 on a 1 to 10 scale. Most of accept and improve is on that list, but again, since we don't know where this person's emotional intensity is, either if they have other ways to bring it down, or if it's just not that incredibly intense to begin with, accept or improve might be more helpful than self-soothing when it comes to the sort of what I think of as the protracted discomfort of things like invalidation and abandonment, or issues and struggling with those things. And then I know this is a DBT podcast, but I don't know if you ever feel this way, Michelle, but sometimes I'm just aware that I can't turn off being a therapist, I don't know, as a whole. Like sometimes a little bit of the rest of that sneaks in ways I can't, that I don't, that I don't always notice. The can't being one of them. And the other thing that I would say to this person just being that I just feeling curious around the statement about feeling hollow and empty and wondering what the person might say would fill them up. I can say from personal experience that I've spent a lot of my life saying that not saying perhaps, but living that the only things that would fill me up were things that were external to me. And I still struggle with that, to be honest, but I have identified it now as dangerous, even if I still struggle with it. Right. So just wanted to gently suggest that if this person is, like I have often done, looking to the outside world for, and I don't just mean, engaging in your hobbies might be fulfilling. And I don't mean that, but I mean like to other people, right? Like to other relationships explicitly, like I'm not full unless I have external approval, that can be a really dangerous place to put our, basket to put our eggs in, I guess. So just a thought there. Now Goose is being annoying, so I'm glad that it's your turn to read, and hopefully he's being quieter by the time we get to me answering again.
Hopefully. This one's also not terribly long, but yeah, a lot of these ones today, there's quite a bit contained in what is said. So this listener writes, I've recently been diagnosed with BPD, and I'm going through a divorce and losing my job. I'm really struggling with being alone. I relied on my wife for most of my support. But the times I'm on my own, I have a difficult time riding the waves and controlling my unhealthy behaviors. So I could use any advice I can get.
All right. You guys get me giving advice while also half wrestling with Goose, because that's the way to keep him from doing more annoying things. All right. So my notes start with hello, pros and cons. Because I realized that one, I really think I don't know, how would I want to put this? Underutilize or undersuggest pros and cons. I think I forget about it sometimes.
Yeah, it's a really great skill.
Right? It really is. And I think we go long spans of time without suggesting it. And I was like, this is fucking perfect, right? Because pros and cons is a way to both get in touch with and then harness and remind yourself about your own motivations for doing or not doing, as the case may be, certain things, right? Controlling unhealthy behaviors, as this person puts it, right? Potentially, if your motivation or your restraint has lived in an external relationship, right? Like maybe, I have no idea, I'm pulling this out of my ass, listener, but your wife reminding you why you don't want to drink so heavily on a Sunday night. I don't know, right? Like before going to work on a Monday. If you're used to these external reminders or external pieces of caretaking and directing, that you might not have a great sense of what those things are for yourself. So spending the time and doing the reflection to determine what goes in your pros and cons, and then really keeping that with you, right? I think Michelle and I, when we have mentioned this, talk about this, put it on your phone, put it on your fridge, put it on your bathroom mirror, put it lots of different places, right? Remind yourself about it regularly, including when you're not struggling with the behavior, right? Like it's not the only time to think about your pros and cons isn't when you're trying to, not do a thing, but actually acquaint yourself with it and think about it and look at it between times. So anyway, yes, I thought pros and cons would be great. And hilariously, I added that after the next skill I'm about to talk about, and I didn't look up the date for pros and cons. Oops. Early. That's what I know. Because probably in the first year, probably back in 2020 sometime. I don't know when, but way in the way back machine, we have a pros and cons episode. The other thing that I thought about potentially, depending on what this person's unhealthy behaviors are, as you were talking about, Michelle, there's always stuff we don't know. That's one of the things I was finding that I really didn't know from this person's message and that I wanted to. But I thought that alternate rebellion might also serve as a way to help this person write out their impulses towards their more unhealthy behaviors potentially. And I did go and find the date for that one. We did that skill on May 31st, 2023 is when we put out that episode on alternate rebellion. But yeah, if your real struggle is, nope, I don't know how to not do anything, right? I don't know how to do nothing. Well, alternate rebellion can be a way to do something that isn't the thing that you're working to avoid. So I did think that that might be helpful. Oh, that's funny. Because I wrote these after your thing, I realized that I wrote the last bit here as an appendage, like also like what Michelle said, but you haven't said your thing yet. So I guess to hop a little bit in advance, Michelle's going to talk a little bit more about community, etc. But I thought looking for local BPD support groups or spaces online might be helpful for this person too. Folks who understand what it's like to have that kind of wiring and be going through big life changes, because that is a really difficult situation.
Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that I wrote down. I just wrote down in my notes, that's a lot of change! Exclamation point. Talk about a divorce, losing a job. Yeah. I mean, those things are a lot in and of themselves without happening at the same time, and without a BPD diagnosis, those things are a lot. So, gosh, listener, I'm glad you're reaching out because that's a lot of change. The skill that immediately came to mind for me was ABC. So there's different elements, of course, to ABC, but especially the A, like the short term accumulating positive emotions, but maybe also the long term accumulating positive emotions, of really looking at both of those pieces. What you can do on more of a small scale day-to-day basis that will bring you just even a little bit of joy or something to look forward to. And the long-term A really focuses on your values. So getting some clarity around that and seeing if there are steps you can take to start living more in alignment with the things that you value could be very helpful when you're going through a time of upheaval and really moving into like a new stage of your life that has a lot of unknowns, and a stage of your life that doesn't sound like it's by your choice. So that's also sometimes when we really need that, is like, all of these things are happening in my life and I wish they weren't. Well, can you come back home to your values? Which I wouldn't expect you to do right away in the immediate aftermath of all the change, but it's a good thing to come back to at some point when you feel ready. I don't know why it really did. It stood out to me, the part of, I'm really struggling with being alone.
Yeah.
I relied on my wife for most of my support. So I wanted to emphasize as well the importance of community. I said, find community somewhere, somehow. I'll share with you a way that I commonly recommend this to my clients. I don't think I've talked about this too much on the podcast, but I will get a lot of clients who say they feel alone, but they're like, I don't necessarily want to go out and like meet people. I don't want to go to a social event. The idea of being in a room to talk with other people where I don't know anybody feels really stressful and uncomfortable to me, which I get. So I tell them to start with going to a place that has people, but that's not meant for socializing. So I'll tell them, I'm like, go to a Starbucks. Just go sit in a Starbucks. You're not going to talk to anybody except for the barista when you place your order, but just go sit in a Starbucks. Like, just be somewhere that's not your house alone if you are desiring social connection of some kind. So you can find that connection and feel like you're with people without actually having to do the awkward go up and shake their hand and say, hey, I'm Michelle, what's your name? If you don't want to do that. Of course, there's lots of ways to find community. You can find causes that are meaningful to you to get involved with. You can find classes to attend with something that you're interested in learning about. You can find all kinds of ways to make community, but that's the place that I recommend people start if they're really nervous about finding it in any other way that would involve more output from them, we could say. Just go and be somewhere where other people also are. Start with that. If you are really wanting to truly make new friends, like get to know people, and you just don't really know where to start, the good news is we do have an episode about that. So the date for that episode that I wrote down is October 7th, 2020, because I knew you might be scrolling far, far back to find it, and I wanted to make it easier for you. If you're like, hey, an episode about making friends, I could benefit from that. That's where it lives, is back in October 2020. Oh, a very long time ago. But yeah, I hope you start feeling less alone soon.
All right. This one says, hello, I am on a wait list for a Oh, also, I did have to turn on the fan, guys. If it's loud, I apologize. There you go. Hello, I am on a wait list for a DBT therapist and trying to learn on my own for now. What advice does everybody have for moments when you are so angry/hurt that you think about the tools but can't bring yourself to even want to try and use them? There are times when my anger seems justified, but even when I do legitimately have a reason to be angry, my over-the-top reactions are often not appropriate anyway. I know I should try to use a tool before I damage a relationship, but sometimes I just can't. Does it take practice? Oh, sorry, does it just take practice or what?
Yeah, I mean, Kate in her response is going to touch on, like, I don't know, the exact skill or skills with an S that this situation is meant for. But I mean, the thing that immediately came to mind for me with reading what this listener wrote was the question at the end. Does it just take practice or what? Yep. It does. And I think the thing to remember is that it takes more practice than you think. Even people who are going through a gold standard DBT program, the weekly group therapy, the weekly individual therapy, the coaching, like they are pretty immersed in DBT for multiple hours a week. They still will often struggle to then actually do skills on a consistent basis in their real life. So to validate you, listener, you are doing it, you're self-studying. You're self-taught with DBT, as a lot of people are. And when you are teaching yourself, it's going to take even more practice. So just be very, very patient with yourself. The fact that you are thinking about skills is huge. That's huge. Because you said when you have moments when you're so angry, hurt, that you think about the tools, but can't bring yourself to even want to try to use them. I just got ecstatic that you said you were thinking about them. Great. Be proud of yourself for that. Again, Kate actually in her notes is really, I think, going to give you a few skills that you need, right? Kate's going to address what it is when you're like, I just don't even want to try to use them. She's going to address all that. But I was really thinking about, I know I should try to use a tool before I damage a relationship, but sometimes I just can't. If I had to give you one to focus on, I would give you TIP. TIP is really good for the over-the-top reactions that you are speaking about. As I'm saying this out loud, I realize you probably need some stop thrown in there too. Like you need stop. And then when you take your step back, then you can use TIP. Because you are going to have to practice stopping the reaction. And there's lots of different skills to help you do that. But having a crisis skill in your back pocket like TIP is so practical. It's easy to remember. If you can get good at having that be a go-to for you in moments of like really intense emotion, that will help. TIP is also a great one to ask other people to remind you to do it if you need support. Tell them what it is. If you don't know what it is, you can find out, right? You can look it up in a book you're reading. You can find the episode on the podcast, but TIPP is the acronym. I think we used to refer to it as TIP. Some people do it that way too. Though the P is double the fun. But it's a great one to ask people or to tell them, hey, I'm learning DBT. This is a skill I'm working on. Can you help remind me if you start to see me doing X, Y, or Z? Like, you might see me go and either like splash some cold water on my face, or if you're really diving into the temperature part of tip, like actually literally diving in, you are going to be putting your face in a bowl of cold water. And you might want to tell people, this is what's going on. This is why I'm doing that. But it's one that's so concrete that it's pretty easy for other people to be like, hey, were you supposed to do something like with exercise when you start to feel this way, like for the eye? And it's great for that. Because yes, it's a doing skill, not a thinking skill. I also think that it's an important reminder to you, because this happens a lot where people are like, okay, I'm learning DBT. I have an understanding of what the skills are. I get what they are, but I'm not using them so much in the moment, so I'm not doing very well with it. I like to remind people too that you can also because in the moment is the hardest time to use the skills. So you can use skills after the fact as well to like take care of yourself, or maybe in your case, because you're talking about damaging relationships, to repair relationships. So even if you totally fuck it up in the moment and you don't use any skills and it goes completely sideways, you can still repair. You can still come back and talk to that person that may have been involved in the interaction. GIVE is the acronym I would recommend for that. GIVE is a great skill for repairing and apologizing. So you can use some elements of GIVE if some damage does happen to a relationship and you want to work on fixing it. So that's what I would say.
Love it. All right. Yeah, because I started off with yes, so much practice. So apparently we both answered to begin with. Also was thinking about some of what the person was talking about, trying to keep runaway hurt or anger from damaging relationships. That might be a great time for using checking the facts and opposite action. But I was like, but the person was saying they're already thinking about the skills to use, but not able to. So.
Well, and the thing that got me, I don't know why I didn't think to put this in my notes, because again, listener, look at how you are taking in DBT, because when they say there are times when my anger seems justified, but even when I do legitimately have a reason to be angry, my over-the-top reactions are often not appropriate in any way. Yeah, that is check the facts and opposite action as a follow-up. Like, they got it. It's right there. They see it.
Yep, exactly. So what's in the way? So when I think about that, I think that the barrier between thinking about a skill and using a skill, at least for me, tends to be willfulness. I.e., you need willingness as a skill to help you counteract that willful I don't wanna, right? Like, I don't wanna because this fucker should know how they treated me, right? Like, I don't wanna because it's too much work and I don't feel like doing it right now. I don't wanna because I want someone to understand how much they hurt me. And if I stop hurting too soon, maybe they won't understand how impactful their actions were, yada, yada, yada. I have lots of things. So I wanted to suggest that this listener spend some time with that skill, especially the place on the actual skill, not worksheet, but like, I don't know, handout, that asks what the catastrophe is, right? Like, if your willfulness seems really immovable, what is the catastrophe that you're afraid of? I think that, or I've found that question can be helpful in shaking loose some pretty implacable willfulness, and also that it can help us sometimes understand why we might be so reactive, or what might be in our mind in that time. And then the other thing I thought might be helpful for this person, maybe not, right? This is one of those places where I'm talking to a thing that absolutely could be the case, but also could not be. But it's worth checking. Goose. No, leave the bags of literal chocolate alone. Yeah. Yes. Oh, why? Why do you do this to me? Why? You know, you go most of the day without doing bad things. What the fuck was I saying? Oh, right, environment. Well, so here you go. Perfect. Here you go. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I was going to edit that all out. I think we should keep it in, Michelle, because this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah. I would say let's keep it in.
Giving Goose reinforcement for his bad behavior right now. I am reinforcing Goose. So what I was going to say is check your environment for things that might be reinforcing your more over-the-top reactions, listener. May not be the case, but often when we're like, well, I see the skills, and I'm like, yep, I could do that, but I just can't quite get myself over the hump to the doing thereof. It's because not doing the skill is already reaping the environmental reward that we're looking for. In Goose's case, he likes to do naughty things around the house to get my attention. So when it works, I'm failing as a dog mom in that particular moment, but it's why he keeps doing it, right? Because it works. When he tries to tear open a bag of chocolates, I react, right? And so I'm reinforcing the thing. If your partner, if your job, if your friendships, if your community seemingly doesn't respond much or well to you until and or unless you have a quote unquote over the top response, then oftentimes that makes it really difficult to budge the over the top response because it's the only thing that's having the impact on the environment that we're looking for. So just a couple of curiosities I thought the listener might bring to their work that might help them see why they're not crossing that bridge between I think about the skill, but I don't do it and can't even bring myself to want to. Can you not want to because there's a catastrophe in the way that you're afraid of, or can you not want to potentially because, well, it doesn't feel effective to rein in your emotional response? Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, good things to think about. Okay, last one. So I've recently started working at a large company that has an onboarding process designed to ensure a standardized curriculum is taught company-wide. In theory, this is a great idea. In practice, there are some wrinkles, it seems. The individual training me seems to have never seen the inside of the curriculum books and is using methods 20 years out of date and directly opposed to the company standard. Along with the inaccurate and dangerous advice, there's a lot of shaming, accusing customers who aren't comfortable with the methods as being brainwashed members of the bad dog cult, and really just an endless list of conspiracy theories and even some incel, MRA type stuff mixed into the classes. Technically, for the next month until this training experience is over, this person is my manager. If I keep my head down and get the rubber stamp of approval, I could go back to my own location and follow the rules as written. How do I best manage my distress in the moment, stick to my values, and still keep my job?
Ugh, that sounds rough.
Yeah.
Also, there's at least one of these, I think, on every episode, every Q&A anyway, where I go, well, fuck, Michelle got all the answers. When you get to the when you get to the notes first. In fact, I explained to Robert that happens every time. I'm like, yep, every time. There's at least ones where I'm like, well, what do I say? Like, and so... and sometimes I just steal half of what you were saying because I can't think of anything else. But in this case, I managed to come up with some other stuff. But admittedly, Michelle has most of my first pick answers in her response. And so I just even modeled it after yours because I liked it. So in order of operations of the questions that the person asked, how do I best manage my distress in the moment? My thoughts were potentially the P or T from accepts. So pushing away the emotional response of the moment or distracting yourself with other thought activities. And I said mindfulness. What I mean very specifically about that is working super hard to lean into the objective, descriptive, non-judgmental awareness, right? So can you manage your own emotional response to things by like narrating and noticing, the manager has said another thing that is wildly out of date. I'm noticing that I am having a response of disgust and distress at hearing this person say incel-like things as the management, right? Like just a mindful narration of what's going on to give yourself that little pop of distance between what's going on and the being immersed in what's going on, I thought might be helpful. For sticking to your values, I really had to stretch to come up with something that wasn't what you're going to say, Michelle.
I feel like everyone who's like well versed in DBT is like, we know what this skill is that Michelle's going to say about sticking to values.
It's fair.
We know what's coming.
Because it's the right one. But I was like, all right, I can do this. And one I thought was, actually, bear with me, but cope ahead. So, for instance, maybe this person does not have this problem. I have a problem with sticking to my values in the face of authority figures. I can be cowed by authority figures quite easily. And so if I were wanting to in some way stand firm, say something, whether it be to that trainer, to anybody else in the system, to anybody, like if I was having to stand up in any way, shape, or form to authority, I would need a lot of cope ahead to rehearse the fuck out of doing that, to give myself a good chance of successfully doing that. In fact, honestly, Michelle, if I were me, I'd have to pair cope ahead with the skill that you're going to say. Mm-hmm. I'd have to practice the skill in my brain a lot to be helpful of it. Helpful of it? That was not an English sentence. To have hope of using it was what I was trying to say. Not really sure where my mouth veered off there. And then I also thought mindfulness of self, potentially. Again, that's sort of just being super attuned to yourself and what's going on internally as a way of noticing what your values are, noticing when others or yourself are about to step across them, right? That sort of self-awareness that hard to stick to your values if you can't notice them in the first place. So those were the two things that I thought about there. And last but not least, potentially, opposite action. I know, potentially, that for me, if someone were being really awful in front of me, I might be tempted to be overly aggressive or mean or something. I don't know. Something that might not keep my job. And so potentially, like, well, I don't want to be kind to this person, so how can I be kind? Or other things just to sort of counterbalance your own emotional state. If you are fairly certain that even if your emotional state is valid and justified, which I'm guessing from your description that it might very well be, listener, that potentially acting on that emotion would not be effective in the moment. And so some opposite action to keep your actions more effective. And then entertainingly, Michelle, somehow I didn't notice that I'm copying you just on a different thing. So I'll let you put that skill in because you're putting it in anyway. It's just for a different place.
I don't know where you're copying me. I'm intrigued.
You have self-soothing on breaks, and I have self-soothing for keeping your job. So we just put it at different answers, places in the answer, but it's still self-soothing.
True.
Yeah, it's still there. All right, on to you, Michelle, and all your first pick answers. Damn it, you and your over-preparedness.
All right, let's see here. So, yes, how this listener can manage distress in the moment. The thing about work, I was just having this conversation with a client the other day as we were talking about how there are so many things that could work outside the workplace. But when you're at work, you just get a lot more limited in what you can do. So it's really important to find ways to manage your distress that don't require you really pausing what you're doing. Because yes, you do get breaks at work. And I'll talk about that. But most of the time you're engaging in tasks and you can't just step away to do things that you would do, say, at your own home. So some of the like sneaky things you can do to manage distress that other people probably won't know you're doing is to do some paced breathing. This is why using our breath is one of the best things that we can do to cope with distress. It physiologically will work every time. And our breath is always with us. Anywhere we go, whatever we're doing, we have our breath. So doing some paced breathing, like from Tip, could be helpful. I also like Half Smile and Willing Hands at the workplace. Take your pick depending on the situation, but people probably won't know if you're using Willing Hands during a meeting. So, or if you are in a situation where you're working kind of in private, you can use Half Smile. And if nobody else is around, they're not going to know. So those can be some good ones, like while you're working. And when you are on break, yep, as Kate said, I think doing some self-soothing, if you can, will be really helpful. This can look like carrying some lotion on you that you really like the scent of and putting it on. This can look like having a playlist that you might listen to for sound. This can look like, yeah, Kate's holding up something she's fidgeting with, right? Like having a fidget for touch. Something that feels soothing and calming and pleasant to you. That could all be good stuff when you're trying to manage the stress in the moment at work. As far as sticking to your values, drum roll. Of course, I chose fast. Everyone saw it coming. Maybe people who are newer to DBT are like, fast, what's that? Well, this is the skill designed for the purpose of helping you stick to your values with how you are communicating. The big caveat here, listeners, so I would encourage you to take a deep dive into fast. Learn the elements of it, see how you could use it in other areas of your life besides work. And then when you feel ready, I know you only have like a month left here before you just get through this training, and then it sounds like your work life goes back to a much better state. But if you are going to use fast, I would recommend not going to this manager directly. I would go to someone else. HR, perhaps, someone who is that manager's boss. I don't know what it looks like in your particular workplace, but I would use fast with somebody else to express your concerns. I don't know if you thought about this, Kate. I didn't until just now, because this is what happens every Q&A, is that I don't realize things until in the moment when we're reading things. We are not here to diagnose anybody, but kind of had a little bit of a question coming up when I'm rereading this, where I'm like, could this manager be struggling with some mental health issues? Maybe, possibly. I don't know. I don't know the answer, because I don't know this manager. I don't know this individual. But there's just maybe some things going on here where I'm like, yeah, there could be some paranoia, delusional thinking at play. In which case, if that's happening, trying to confront people about their delusional thoughts rarely goes well. So you would be using the fast skill with somebody else in the company to talk about your concerns. As far as how to keep your job, a great thing that goes along with, it really matches up with the interpersonal effectiveness skill of Dear Man. But I love the dime game. The dime game is it's really an activity that you do, that we have a whole episode about it. But it helps you determine how firmly or strongly to ask for something that you want. So when you are in situations where you're like, oh my God, my manager did this again today, do I literally bring up every single concern, or when do I speak up, or when do I not, or that kind of a thing? The dime game may help you figure out when to use your voice and when to maybe let something go, depending on the situation and the severity of what's going on. It just gives you a framework to help with those decisions. And I think a lot of times what people worry about when it comes to keeping their job is they're just like, I don't want to be this problem employee. I don't want to get a reputation for rocking the boat too much. Even if you have good reason to rock the boat, I understand wanting to be very mindful about how and when you rock the boat. So dime game is something that could, I think, really help you with that.
I like the dime game. Have we ever done an episode that even includes talking about the dime game? I have no idea.
We did a whole episode about it.
We did? Good job,
I don't remember when, but yeah, we did a whole episode about it.
Go
a long
us.
time ago. Like you said earlier, back in the 2020 era, when we were recording about a different skill every week.
Oh my gosh.
What a time.
What a time.
Before you had your clinic, before I had children, life was simpler.
So simple. You made it all the way the fuck down to my house for weeks.
Yeah, before COVID.
Bonkers. Anyway, anyway,
Yeah.
if you want to be featured
Back to the Q&A. Yeah.
on a future Q&A, go ahead and continue to post in the Facebook group and send us emails at dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we will continue to plug on through, and Michelle will keep us on the numbered path, I believe in.
Yes, we'll keep the numbers straight as best we can, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.